Yo, what's going on, guys? Back with another episode of the CTW podcast, as always, with Jason. Jason, what's up, buddy?
What's up, man? Excited.
So, yeah, man, last week it was a fun episode for us. A couple of guys that were state contenders year after year, right when you and I kind of got into coaching back in the early 2000s, the Bichner brothers, Matt and Danny from Glenelg High School. Now they're back there as coaches doing big things. So it was cool to sit down and talk with these guys last week.
Yeah, I mean, you and I have known them for a while, and just good dudes, and like they're doing everything right. As far as I can see from the outside, and wish them luck.
Yeah, can't deny that year after year, Glenelg is contending for that state title. Still falling just a little bit short every year. I think they've been in the finals like 4 or 5 times in a row now, but it's going to happen for them eventually. I'm pulling for them, especially now that they're out of the division that my team competes in. It makes it a little bit easier to pull for them, but definitely love those guys. Before we get started here, just let you know this episode is brought to you by the MSWA, the Maryland State Wrestling Association, an affiliate of USA Wrestling. These guys are running everything as far as your wrestling programs go. Junior league, a lot of in-season stuff. High school and junior league, all ages out of season, doing tournaments, competitions, clinics for coaches and wrestlers. They want people to learn and educate the people and grow the sport of wrestling within the state of Maryland. Doing big things over there. Also brought to you by the Hillbilly Hammers Wrestling Club. Coach Casey Camp, who's going to be a guest coming up here shortly on the show. He's got a cool story to tell.
Do they have internet out in Garrett County?
I think he's going to drive to Washington County so that he can get some internet in there. But Casey's doing great things out there. You see the influence he's had on some of the people out in Western Maryland. Hillbilly Hammers runs out of a huge facility. If you're ever out in that neck of the woods for whatever reason, you got to check this guy out. He one thing I love about him, I see him every year at the state tournament. And if it's one of his guys, he's invested in that guy's match. It doesn't matter whether it's Northern Garrett, where he coaches in season, Southern Garrett, or anywhere else. He gets totally emotionally invested. He wants to see everybody succeed and really roots for a kid that works hard. So not a bad wrestler himself. I think you sat in a couple state finals.
Yeah, unfortunately, we were on the losing side a couple times for him. But yeah, great dude, great wrestler, and good coach.
Yeah, so definitely check out the Hillbilly Hammers Wrestling Club. If you're interested in sponsoring or supporting the program at all, hit us up at info@championsinc.org. I say donation. It's not really sponsoring the program. It's more of a donation. It's all volunteer based and everything. So nobody's actually making money off of this, but it goes back to the program that helps the kids, whether it be with training equipment, competition entry fees, travel expenses, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, all of that's going back into growing the sport and building the Champions That Wrestle organization. So, I guess it would help grow the podcast too, but, for the most part, it's just going right back into the organization.
No, and I really appreciate everybody that's been, supportive of us so far. That Dan Ricker episode is pushing near 1,000 views right now.
Yeah, that's definitely the most popular so far. We'll see if anybody can top them.
Yeah, we've got some good guests lined up along the way. Definitely subscribe on the YouTube channel. Hit the like and share buttons on YouTube and on social media. If you could get the word out, we really appreciate it. I don't want to spend too much time. This is a great episode coming up. Really learned a lot from these two and kind of cool to hear the wrestler and coach perspective. So you got anything else, Jason?
Nope, let's get it going.
Cool, here we go. Here with Danny and Matt Bichner. Hope you guys enjoy it. Thank you for supporting Champions That Wrestle. Yo, what's going on, guys? Back at another episode of the CTW podcast here with Jason. Jason, what's up, buddy?
What's up, dude?
You seem super excited, as always, to be here.
I am. I'm excited to get our first dueling brother podcast going.
Yeah, I got to be honest. I don't know if I'm ready for it. I think a big critique is that time management is obviously, I'll say, our forte. It's certainly not my forte. You're better at it than I am. And the last thing we want to do is bring on 2 guests at once when we have trouble balancing the time with one, but we're going to do the best that we can. It's that ready, fire, aim type approach that we always take to this. So let's get right to it. Here with the Bichner brothers from Glenelg High School. Guys, what's going on?
What's going on, guys? Thanks for having us.
Danny, what's up, man?
Thanks for having us. Hey, guys.
Hey, so you guys have been there at Glenelg for Boy, this is 10 years for you now, right, Matt?
This will be – last year was my 10th my 10th at Glenelg, 7th as head coach, so this will be upcoming 11th. Yeah.
Okay. And then, Danny, you started – it was right out of college?
Yeah, so it was right when Matt took the head job. So it was I graduated college 2012, and then it was the following year. So it was 2013-14.
Okay, nice.
Were you
and
just
how's
like,
that?
yo, you got to come on staff, or like, was it a plan to do that?
Well, when I took over, obviously I always wanted to get Danny in the room. He has a lot of knowledge. We have similar philosophies. Actually, at that point, when I first started coaching, it was Chris Rosas was the head coach, and I only got involved because Rob Bowman, who was at St. Joe for the 4 years, his son Bobby was there, came back, and he was my coach. I didn't wrestle in college. I regretted that, and I really wanted to get back involved with the sport. I knew he was going back, asked if they needed some help. He said, yeah. But we couldn't really find a full squad. We had Steve Willingham was there for 1 year as the JV coach because he was the resource officer at Glenelg until he became the Century head coach. We had another few guys that stepped in, but I think going into my first year as head coach, we were looking for staff to fill. So Danny was an obvious choice to fill that with Rob. And to be honest, I don't even remember, was it Tim Chase, Danny, that was there the first year? Tim Chase, I think, was our other coach, because maybe people don't know. In Howard County, up until this upcoming season, you can only have 4 coaches total, 2 paid, 2 volunteer. It's not like other counties where you can have as many as you can. Howard County is very strict. It's being changed this year. They're adding 2 more volunteer to every sport in Howard County, so we're excited about that.
I didn't realize that was a Howard County rule, because coming up.
Baltimore County, I think it's 3. There's 3 paid spots. I think you're allowed an assistant for each paid. I don't ever fill that at Owings Mills, but so does that mean everybody in an Oakland Mills coaching shirt is going to be an official coach next year? Because I might be throwing stones a little bit, but it seems like at the state tournament every year, it's like an army of people there. Is that like, flying under one of those rules that we just turn a blind eye to?
I guess so. I mean, yeah, back when I was in high school, I don't know if you guys remember it, but we lost a match because there was a 5th coach.
Yes.
Sitting on the bench.
Yes. That,
It was Appleton.
Yes.
Correct.
Yes. They reported you, right?
Yeah, they put it on video and they sent it, and we lost the dual meet because of it, because someone's brother, his brother Hornzell, was sitting on the bench. And they made us forfeit it.
And I don't know, what year was that? Do you remember?
That was 06, I believe.
Okay.
That was my senior year.
Yeah, so I don't know if you guys remember, Mac, and you remember this, is, we got, we've known you guys since then, and so we got wind of that, and obviously we're like, what the fuck? So I think you guys needed a win to get into the region duels that year.
To clinch it, yeah.
Yeah, and you were against us, and so I don't want to say.
You need me to take this one free.
All right, go ahead.
So yeah, what happened was it comes down to the end of the year. We have a tri-meet with Glenelg and River Hill. We meaning Hammond. So Hammond, the top 3 teams in Howard County have a tri-meet at the very end of the year to end the season. We beat River Hill, the first one, to clinch the Howard County title, because I believe Glenelg lost to River Hill, and then with the forfeit had 2 losses. So Toke Barbosa, who was the head coach at Hammond at the time, said, all right, like, they did them dirty. If they miss out on region duels for this, then that's completely terrible. So he's like, we're just going to throw guys out there, to give them favorable matchups, let them qualify to region duels, and then whoever the better team at the region is. But we're essentially throwing this one. And it's probably like halfway through, we send somebody out that's like, a JV kid or something like that. And Bowman looks over and is like, what are they up to? Chewing his gum. Man, what are they doing? Hey, get off, get your stuff, throws another JV kid out, and the Hammond kid ends up winning it. So it's like, oh, Christ. We put another guy out, and Bowman's like, what are they doing here? And they throw somebody else out. And then it's Hammond kids start winning when we're trying to throw out favorable matchups to give Glenelg the win. And Toke is yelling over from the corner, like, Rob, I'm trying to let you win. And Bowman, I don't think, understood what he's saying. Hey, you just worry about your team. Like, Bowman's never argumentative, or I never see that side. He's always cool as can be. But then, towards the end of it, there's 2 weights left, and Bowman goes to the head table, and Toke goes also, and he goes, "You're trying to let us win that one, weren't you?" And Toke was like, "Yeah," and he goes, "Yeah, I missed that." Okay. And Hammond ended up winning. Luckily, if I recall correctly, Glenelg did make it in on a tiebreaker criteria, so they still got their opportunity to compete for the region dual title that year. But it was just one of those funny stories. But yeah, that was, you guys found out the hard way about somehow those rules can come back to bite you when it's convenient for other people.
Yeah, it was unfortunate. I mean, like I said, that is not a rule that we see most counties have. Maybe it is in other counties. Maybe they just don't follow it. I know, like I said, we are pretty strict, and they make us stick to that. So it's funny when we go to state duels and Decatur has 12 coaches or Damascus has 10, 12 coaches, and we can only have 4. So I'm excited to get 2 more guys in there. We actually, I'm sure we're going to bring up the Warhawks during this podcast, but we've asked JC Porter to come in and help as much as he can without leaving his responsibility to the Warhawks. He is very much on board with doing that, and so is Dan Rickert. He's allowed us to do that. We obviously wanted to make sure that wasn't a problem for him. So we're excited to get JC in there. And then we've talked to a few other people. Bailey Thomas was a guy that we really respect a lot. That is going to be a good coach whenever he can get around to do it. We're hoping he might have time this year. So we're excited to add 2 more guys, just further, develop our kids during the season. So I'm really excited about that.
Nice. So let's talk a little bit about coming up. You guys came up through the Glenelg program. It's almost like the perfect storm with you guys. You guys are almost the perfect examples of this, because Glenelg, before you guys got there, I always thought of them as guys that had the occasional really tough wrestler. Jimmy O'Connor, Jeremy Lignelli came up through those programs, were very tough, but never had a solid team. And then once you guys get there and make the lineup, it's okay, now these guys are a force to be reckoned with. And ever since then, it feels like you guys are always a contender for definitely a county championship and more often than not a state championship. So is this the longest dynasty now, or the longest running dominant team in Howard County history?
I'm not sure. I mean, you look back at it, everyone seemed to have some sort of run. I know Oakland Mills had a long run. River Hill had a run. I think the record was 6 county titles in a row, Matt?
I believe it was 5 county titles in a row was the record for the most county championships going, at least in the Howard County tournament. And we actually would have tied that this last year. We lost, not this past season, but the year before, we lost by 1 point in the county tournament to Oakland Mills. If we would have won that, we would have had our 5 straight county titles, and we would have been going to set the record this year. So unfortunately that didn't happen. But I know, man, you guys had a great run when we were there. I thought we had a tough team, and Hammond was solid. I mean, but Howard County just has different teams have different runs. They just put it together.
Yeah. Now, what do you think about Howard County? Let's compare and contrast a little bit from when you guys were there as competitors and now where you're there as coaches. How's the county developed over the last 15 years now?
So I'd say there's some good wrestling in Howard County, but I don't think the depth is there the way that it once was. You're still popping some studs here and there, but the depth seems to be lacking. I mean, you watch some of the county finals, some of them aren't matches, because someone has distanced themselves so much. The competition in dual meets, I mean, that's always there, but it's typically 3 or 4 teams at the top. But as far as the depth throughout the county, I don't know if it seems like less. But the high quality kids, you're still getting some of those, but just depth's not there, in my opinion.
Gotcha. Matt, any input with it?
No, I mean, I always think Howard County is a very solid league. Wild Lake even had a bunch of weights. I mean, they're kind of the team that hadn't been able to fill a full roster recently, and they seem to have a bigger squad. Long Reach is having full lineups now. Centennial, when I was in school, Centennial was badass with the Nakasones, Ventura, Bolger, Montanez. They were solid. They haven't quite been there. Athelton was good. I mean, Wild Lake was real good when I was there. They had some good guys. I was looking back, David Miles and Zach Brown. Those guys were studs. hopefully that just keeps growing. I think we have the biggest numbers JV and varsity we've ever had was last year. So hopefully with the Warhawks, with the Vipers, with the other junior league teams coming up and the sport is evolving, hopefully we get more kids. I mean, I know what Yo and Kilo are trying to do and get Hammond back going. They have, they're on the up and up. I think it's only going to get better, and hopefully that'll just keep – you can get kids involved in the sport in junior leagues. It doesn't matter what school they're going to, and then when they get to school, I mean, we want to have solid competition, especially since we're limited on the amount of matches we can get dual meet wise. We want to make take advantage of that and get some of the toughest matches we have. I mean, we have that now with River Hill, Hammond, Oakland Mills, those teams, Marriage Ridge last year. We have some solid teams, but it'd be great to be competitive in 8 out of your 11 county matches. If you can do that.
How many guys did you have on the team this year?
We started with 47, 48. I think we
only 2 seniors.
Yeah, and only 2 seniors.
Yeah. Wow, that's great. And and both of you guys you don't have a coach in the school, right?
No, we don't. We get a ton of support from them. The football coach who was there, he got there when I was in high school, and he was there until last year. He's still the weights teacher and active. His name's Butch Schaefer, but he's a big wrestling guy. He's from Jersey. He still follows local wrestling up there. But since he's been at Glenelg, he pushes all of his guys to wrestle. Our football coaches understand how much it translates and how much it helps them. So Matt will go to the football practices, talk with the team, and out of the coaches there, every single one is speaking up saying, hey, you guys should wrestle. And they're pushing their kids. One of our captains, Trey Fleece, his dad's one of the coaches, and he told the football guys, said, I wouldn't have been able to play football in college if I didn't wrestle. So he's translating it back to football, and that helps our numbers. Obviously, being successful, that helps too because kids want to be a part of it. But it's huge having the football support and still having people in the school that you trust between those coaches and also our AD who lets us do our own thing. And he's there when we need him. But outside of that, he's hands off. We do our thing. And as long as nothing gets brought to him, he lets us be. The support we have inside the building is there. It's not like we're on our own. So that's huge.
Yeah, when I look at your team, too, I think I've commented to both of you guys about this. It's like, what are you feeding those kids? Like, they all seem – I know there's exceptions to it, but especially in the upper weights, these kids look jacked up. And I'm like, my Lord, do you guys implement a weight training program, or is that more on the football team, and that's the benefit of transitioning some of those football players to wrestle in the winter?
Most of the big boys, we don't do structured lifts. I wish we could. I mean, I wish I had the flexibility to go there and run an off-season thing. But like Danny said, we have lacrosse coaches in the off-season that run lifts. So during the fall, if you're not playing football, you can be lifting with the lacrosse team guys or the open lifts. I mean, during the summer, football has morning workouts that anybody can go to. I mean, we do have a lot of kids that play multiple sports, so they're lifting and working out with those teams as part of those teams anyways. But, I mean, we adopted a philosophy. I mean, we pride ourselves on being some of the hardest working kids and hardest working wrestlers in the state. I mean, we want to have the toughest practice. We push the kids really hard because we want themselves to break in the room. So when the going gets tough in matches, they're ready for whatever happens. So we condition, we run a lot. We do a lot of push-ups, calisthenics. It's kind of like boot camp, especially the first month of the season. I mean, I know that helps obviously get those kids more toned up. And I mean, you want to be muscular when you step out there. I mean, that's the first thing when I was weighing in, you catch a glimpse of the guy you're wrestling. I mean, if you're wrestling a kid that doesn't look like he's fit and in shape, that's just a mental edge you have. So anything you can do. I mean, I didn't lift really until I got to college. I wish I would have done more of it in high school because I just see how much it helped my athleticism. So we tell the guys to work out, do their stuff, when they can.
Another part of it too, like if you're talking 5-6 years ago, we would make fun of our team for how soft we were, and then we'd go out and battle. And it wasn't until recent where our guys actually looked like wrestlers. Before that, we had a bunch of soft bodies. But it was kind of funny because you go out there and then you win matches. So it hasn't always been that way. I'll say that much.
Yeah, I was going to say, you have, a lot. You mentioned the 3 sport athletes. Drew Satka was he the Maryland? He was like the Maryland athlete.
Son athlete of the year, right?
Yeah.
Male athlete of the year. Yep.
Football, wrestling, and lacrosse, was it?
Lacrosse, yep.
Yeah, that seems to be the trifecta out there. I mean, I just moved out to Glenelg a couple of years ago, and I mean, lacrosse is huge, but like even youth sports in general out here is like you have a lot of parent support. You know, they get into the youth leagues like really early on, and it's like, you know, you have those, you know, it's like you're saying, lifting with football or lacrosse, like, you know, the athletes are there for sure.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah, we certainly go ahead.
Oh, I was just on Drew Saka. Like that's somebody that really stands out to me. Because I'm an outsider looking in, being in Baltimore County now. But it was almost like he was Matt Saka's younger brother. And then now all of a sudden he's his own, 2 years running. He comes in you were talking about an improvement. That sophomore to junior year, he just made a huge jump. And what do you attribute that to? Is that off-season wrestling? Is that his, just kind of physically filling into his body, or mental edge? Like what was that all about?
Yeah, so, and I'll start this one, Matt. I think it started with Max Saka winning a state title. And that's something. Max Saka in our room was always the hardest working guy, but he would get beat up in the practice room by kids who wouldn't win as many matches as him just because of how he competed out on the mat. And I'm sure Drew thought that he knew that he could reach Max's level because of his athleticism. But Max winning a state title on just determination and hard work and breaking kids and pacing them, that made it a mental shift in Drew's head, in my mind, because he was like, Max did it. I know I can do it. He did a little bit of off-season. A lot of our guys don't do a ton of off-season stuff. He would do like one practice a week with us, and we would roll and clean up some things. But he definitely filled out more. But I think more of it was mental than anything. And Matt, I don't know what else you got to add to that.
No, I mean, that's something in our coaching philosophy too, is just the mental aspect. I think we stress that. It's not, we look at progress. That's something that we, wins are going to come. We focused on the attitude and effort. That's our two big things. Like, if you have the right attitude, you go out there and compete and you give the effort. There's nothing as coaches we can be disappointed in. I can't yell at a kid for going out there and busting his ass and wrestling a kid tough and losing, because that's going to happen. And, kids are going to have bad matches where they don't necessarily get it done. And if you're yelling at, if you're the kind of coach that yells and flips out and makes a kid feel shitty for that's wrong. We want the attitude and the effort. If that's there, good things are going to happen. So, it starts in the practice room. I think, if you look at the trickle down, like when I first took over as head coach, we were a little bit more set in our ways as far as, kids got away with being able to coast and practice more. And when I took over, we were, we worked hard. We drilled intensely. We focused on, we want to compete when we're wrestling live. It's not like dicking around and laughing. Like, we used to see kids getting pinned or getting taken down, and kidding with their practice partners. And that, we tried to cut that out real quick, because, Daniel attests to it too. When he was wrestling with Stinn at Marquette, when I was wrestling Tim Chase in high school, I would get the best of Tim a lot of times because he was younger than me. I was bigger. But, he'd get me every now and then I'd get pissed. And I'd throw – there's a couple times Tim would take me down. The next time he shot, I'm throwing a crossface from, the next wall and laying him out. And I felt bad about that after, but it's just the competitive nature. That starts in the room, and it takes kids picking up on that and doing that. And it started with Mike Budak. He was probably our first guy to really push the action in the room. He would go – when we were hand fighting, our philosophy is physicality. We want to break kids in the hand fight. We want to wear on their head. We want to make them get tired because we know our conditioning's there. We want them to not want to fight. We want to make it a fight. Pull those kids to deep water and see what happens. Because to be honest, not a lot of kids are tough in Howard County in the state. You beat them up a little bit. You get physical with them. They start looking for excuses. So that's our philosophy, but you need a guy, a conduit to translate to that team, so it's not just us yelling it. And Mike Budak was big for us in that. I remember Max Saka was a freshman, Mike was a junior and senior, and he would just beat up Max every day in hand fighting. I remember one practice, Mike, I was watching hand fighting, the whole room's doing it, and I see Mike Budak throwing uppercuts at Max, and I'm like, stop the drill, let the kids go. I bring them to him, like, what's going on? Max is a little bit upset. He's like, I just asked him, is everything good? And Mike said, I thought he called me like a slur or something, or
I think he said, I thought he called me a bitch.
Yeah, and Mike just started punching him, and that was like, hey, we don't want to do that, but I like the attitude, and that trickled to Max, and Max really kind of carried it into the guys like Alsheimer and Jacob Jones, and then we got Jared in there. Jared was huge, and Alsheimer huge for just translating that to the younger guys. Sam was big for Drew last year or 2 years ago when he was a junior, getting over that hump. There'd be days when Drew didn't want to work hard, and Sam would literally be wrestling and slap him in the face and be like, I know you may not want to work hard, but I need to work hard because I'm trying to win a state title. I'm a senior. And I think Drew, that kind of came with the mental stuff he gained from his sophomore year. But with that push, that kind of allowed Drew to really, jump levels and going into that state tournament his junior year. And then it carried into this season. And Drew was doing the same thing to our guys this year, pushing them the same way. And when we're yelling something, he's the guy that's yelling it to them. So it's not just us having to yell and kids being like, well, whatever, the coaches are just yelling. So I think that kind of, it takes a while to build the foundation, and it takes guys buying in. And like I said, Mike Budak was huge to get that started. Now we're starting to see it just happens naturally.
Now, did you bring that as wrestlers too? You said a couple of examples where you did, but were you coached that way as well? Maybe you had it naturally as a competitor, but did you have that? Was your team coached that way when you guys were coming up?
So, and I'll get into this a little bit. Our junior league team was our junior. So we started out in Mount Airy wrestling. We started out at the same time. Our trajectories were a little different. Matt was more of a late bloomer. I mean, he was bigger, wrestling bigger kids. But the Mount Airy room that we had when I was in middle school and the end of Matt's middle school, it was the baddest room in the state. And it would be like what the Warhawks are now. Like, you had people traveling from all over. You had a Jamie Clark in there. You had people from all over the state that were coming to our room. And the room, it was tough. It was a battle every day. There was no talking back. It was you go in there and you go to war. Like, I know Matt was in a group a lot of days with Mark Chigurdanis, Brad Katzenberger, and like Mike McGill. And Matt's getting his ass kicked.
That's a tough group.
Yeah. Yeah. So if Matt started to fold it all, he was feeling it by those guys. And Matt wasn't really on their level yet, but it didn't matter. You didn't have a choice, those Mount Airy teams back then, like you hear Rickard talk about like no one was going to VAC and all that. We did those things. We went to Virginia Challenge. We went to Tyrant Duels. We went out to Tulsa. We were traveling. We had that type of team, but our practice room back then was tough. Downey was on a team. Helen, there's a ton of people you could rattle off that came from that room, but that's where it was ingrained into us. Like, if you're going to be wrestling, it needs to be competitive, and you're going to be going at each other. But then after the practice, it is what it is. That's how we're getting better.
So Rickard's a liar, is what you're saying. You guys did it first, and he's costing you.
He may not recognize that. He may not know that. It was funny. I think one year his nephew was on our Mount Airy team, and Rickard got into a fight with, I want to say it was Mark Chigurdanis' brother, but we were on the same – he was there to root on his nephew, but the Southern Maryland team forfeited to him, so Rickard started chirping, and then him and Mark Chigurdanis' brother ended up getting a little scrap. I think that might have been my first introduction to Rickard. But I know he ran a couple practices in our room back then too.
Who was the coach of that junior league team?
So it was my father. Well, the junior league was started by Tommy Wheeler. So he wrestled at Sherwood back early 80s. His kids wrestled at South Carroll. Thomas Wheeler, I believe he was a state finalist, right, Matt?
Yeah, he lost to Mike Kessler his senior year.
Yeah, so Tom Wheeler started the program. Then they brought him and my dad wrestled together at Sherwood. They brought in, well, once we were old enough, we joined. But it was my later years, it was my dad, Doug Shank, the Shank's father. DeSarno was a part of that coaching staff too. But early on, you had Jeff Ryder too. Anyway, Mr.
Don Katzenberger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it morphed into – it was real local, and then it morphed into something bigger over the 4 or 5 years we were there. But we were tough, and that room was really tough.
Now, how did you guys transition to high school then after, like, coming out of that room, moving into high school? Was it an adjustment?
Matt, I'll let you take that.
Yeah, no, I mean, when I came in as a freshman, I didn't know Rob at all. I didn't know the other coaches. Dan O'Connor, Kevin O'Connor, I think he had wrestled junior league with us a little bit. We knew him, but I didn't know. And we grew up right on the Howard County line in Mount Airy. So we played Mount Airy sports growing up. Mount Airy, like Maya football, Maya baseball, Mount Airy Mustangs wrestling. So a lot of our friends, like, to be honest, when I went to high school, I didn't have it. So obviously you went to middle school and elementary school with certain kids. The kids that I wrestled with were a lot of kids that went to Damascus, Linganore, South Carroll. I mean, we're closer to Damascus than we are to Glenelg, our family is. So we went in there, it was kind of a different environment. I remember the first week I could tell that because you were asking these other freshmen, they're like, how many years have you wrestled? How many years? And when I was like 5 years, 6 years, they're like, holy crap. We don't get that at Glenelg a ton, a lot of kids with experience. I remember my freshman year, Dan O'Connor was at the back to school night where they meet, the winter sports meeting where the AD kind of talks, gives you the details, all the rules, you meet the coaches. And he told my mom, he said, Dean, my dad, might get Matt back this year because Matt's trying to compete for 125. We have a senior captain there. Matt's not going to make the squad basically. And after 2 weeks, probably a week later, I was beating that senior. He quit. Actually, all the seniors on our team that year quit. We had 3. So it was a different dynamic. I don't necessarily say that was me because I think Rob Bowman did a good job of getting that started too a few years before that. I mean, he's an Army Ranger, so a lot of the boot camp mentality, I would say I formed some of that from him, but definitely competing and wrestling hard. And I don't know why. It's maybe something that I don't realize and don't necessarily see with some kids today is just wrestling smarts. Like I don't know how many times kids have come up and been like, I didn't know what the score was or what's the score, what's going on. Yeah. I didn't know that. I knew exactly what was going on every time. Like I don't need to look at the table.
Nobody was there to text it to them. You should have texted them.
And that's something I don't understand. So I was really good at that. I was a real smart wrestler. But like Danny said, I got beat up in junior leagues. We would go to tournaments. We were the kind of team, we wrestle our league dual meets, but we were in tournaments every weekend. We go up to Philly on a Saturday, wrestle in a tournament, and drive across to Pittsburgh throughout the night, stay in a car, get a cheap hotel, wake up the next day, wrestle an open. And I remember we joke about it because I kept a record sheet on a loose leaf piece of paper. I just ripped it out, had it in my duffel wrestling bag. My dad would do the seating and he'd be like, Matt, what's your record? Like, give me an estimate. I'd be like, oh, here's my sheet. I'm 12-16. And he'd be like, that can't be right. Like, we're going to write 20-4. So I'd get seated top 4 in these tournaments in PA and just get beat up by bigger kids and just it was crazy. I didn't expect my freshman year when I came in, I was kind of expecting it to be similar. And I went, I think I went 15-0, my first 15 matches in high school, all pins. I started getting some press and it was kind of a weird, I wasn't expecting that. I had a tough weight class my freshman year. I was wrestling I lost to Plas 3 times from Oakland Mills. I lost to Ventura, but it was definitely a change. And I don't know if just having different coaches or maybe I hit, puberty and was more mature mentally and physically wise that helped, or just, those times, all those years grinding and practicing, going to those tournaments just kind of paid off. But that's where it started. And then, I was pretty successful my freshman year. I remember going to regions. I had a really tough region. Rob actually asked me if I wanted to bump up in weight, and I told him no. I didn't feel like that was right to the guy above me who had been wrestling there all year. I wanted to try to make states in my weight class, and I ended up placing 6th in there. I think I looked at the bracket the other day. All the top 6 seeds in that weight class had less than 8 losses throughout the season or something. It was loaded. Joe McKeever from Lackey, who was a stud, was there. Plas, Ventura, they had one of the Te'o brothers.
Was Geronimo there? Or is there a Geronimo?
No, not that year. Okay. And a kid from Southern was really tough. I lost to Plas in the Conti semis 4-2 to not make states. And, so that was kind of a heartbreaking end to the freshman year. But I think just that success and knowing I could hang kind of set me in motion for the next 3 years. And then to build into, I kind of felt like a leader after that year where I could kind of lead the room. And my sophomore year, I ended up placing 3rd at states, had a great state tournament. And then the year after, we got Danny, Stinnett, Chase. That's kind of when I feel like it turned. I maybe kind of started to show the foundation of that. But when Danny got in there, that was, it's not just me, the one competing. It's having other guys that are competing. And I think that's kind of when it started to change.
Well, you also had Kevin O'Connor who left after your freshman year too, right?
Yeah, that's true. Kevin O'Connor was there. Like my freshman year, I remember wrestling teams, and like we wrestled River Hill the first weekend at a dual tournament at River Hill, and we wrestled River Hill, and only 3 people won. It was me, Brinza, and O'Connor. And then we wrestled them literally the Tuesday after that weekend in the first duel of the year, and Kevin O'Connor was sick, so it was just me and Brinza were the only 2 kids that won. I remember the Shevlin brothers pinned 2 of our kids back-to-back in leg cradles, like back-to-back matches. They pinned our kids in leg cradles, looking at their stands, like giving thumbs up. It was definitely different than what it is now.
Yeah. That's well, so, and it's kind of, it's weird because you never wrestled on a state championship team, correct? Now, Danny, you did your senior year?
Yeah, my senior year, we won the tournament. We lost in the duels. Owings Mills actually got us.
Oh, okay. And then Matt, you made state duels a few times as a competitor?
Yeah, my sophomore year, we made state duels. We ended up wrestling Owings Mills in the semis. They were real good. We got beat up that match. And I don't know. I mean, I can't say for sure if we had made state duels back when O'Connor, Glenelg, those guys were there, but I know it wasn't very often. That was really the first year. And then I think the next 2 years, we didn't make it because you guys were and Hammond was, I mean, you guys were better than us both those years. So I think I only made it over to state duels as a competitor once.
Yeah, well, it's weird though. It's like, because from my perspective looking in, I look at both of you guys as being wrestling for state championship programs. And I think part of the reason is I compare it a lot of times. This is going to be a really stupid story, but when I was in Thailand a few times, I would look at these like huge, massive temples, and I've had the opportunity to go there a few times. And I remember looking at this one thing. It was a tiger temple that was like 1,300 steps that just go all the way up to this really high off a mountain, and it's cool looking. But I remember looking at the very first brick, like at the very bottom of the first step, and thinking like, that brick gets no credit, like because without that, there's no foundation that built up to like what this thing became. So I still look at you as being part of those championship programs as a competitor, because I look at you as a guy that laid that foundation as it built up and then eventually became a state championship team.
Yeah, I mean, I look at you guys as, like you said, the beginning of, that Glenelg, period. And obviously there was, a little bit of
that period's still going, by the way. Like, it's
right
there. That's a tough team.
Yeah, I mean, you guys had, would you consider that win versus South Carroll this year in the regions as an upset? Or, I think a lot of people were picking South Carroll in that, and you guys took them out. And I mean, that's how many years in a row making state duels is that now?
Yeah, it was 5 years in a row making state duels, 4 years in a row making the finals.
Right. So, let's talk about Damascus, right? They've kind of been, they've obviously been dominant in Maryland, and they've kind of been your, nemesis in the finals. What is, not necessarily zeroing in on Damascus, but what is it going to take for you guys to get, beat Damascus or whoever is coming out of there?
I guess you'd be a favorite now.
Yeah, right. And it's not a short answer. It takes time. If you step back and you look at what Damascus does and how they're set up, that's the ideal situation, right? Damascus has the Damascus, I think it's DSA. I'm not sure exactly what the acronym is, but they have their own Damascus athletic or youth sports, right? And they all play together, and they play football together. They wrestle together. They go to high school together. And so they have this big funnel, and the amount of kids that wrestle in that area is tremendous. So they have this big funnel that feeds into the high school. And it's seamless. The kids growing up in that area want to go to Damascus High School.
Yeah, like everything's the Damascus. They're all the green colors, right?
Yep.
Damascus.
It's all seamless, and it's community driven. It's the whole community is behind that program. It's like the ideal situation. For us, we get a lot of kids from the Warhawks, obviously. So if you had your region that feeds to Glenelg, if you're able to build that base and get a lot of those kids wrestling, and you build that to the point where in high school you have a team full of guys who have been wrestling together for the last 4 or 5 years, then you have something great you can work with. That's where you want to get to eventually. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we want JC involved in the program, because you get more kids staying with wrestling through high school. You get more kids who maybe look private. Now they're going to be like, well, I trust JC. He trusts these guys. Let's go do this together. And so you drive that. So if you're looking like what's going to happen this next year, I can't answer that. But long-term, that's the goal, that you get to that point. Then way down the road, you're hoping, well, if a kid has a choice to go to a McDonough, St. Joe, or he can go to Glenelg for free, he's picking Glenelg because he can get the same opportunities and have a different experience, but still really positive. And in the end, they're going to get where they need to go.
Yeah, so go ahead.
Oh,
Matt.
would you say Damascus is your rival?
I mean, I've heard the quote that you can't really call it a rivalry if it's one-sided. I mean, we've beaten them. We beat them at the tournament 2 years ago at their tournament. I have a lot of respect for Ferg and Obendorfer. I mean, those guys clearly are competitors. We thought we had the formula 2 years ago, and the years before.
I thought
they were better than us.
Means anything too. I thought Orange Mills had the formula 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Also.
No, like the 2 years before when we lost in the finals, we were not. They were, better than us. And I know a few of those box scores looked like they blew us out. And I think I even told Tim Schwartz, like, we got there and we did some moves. We bumped some guys around. I mean, we could have kept our lineup square and lost by 5.
Right, you're trying to win, and Matt, you told me that too. It's like, okay, we need to do this because we're trying to win. Lose 40-10, whatever. Like, you're trying to win the. So I mean, going back to the private thing, I mean, you had it's no secret. Meyer Shapiro's a Glenelg district kid. You've had a couple of them over the years that have gone private. You mentioned that. Is that something you're actively focusing on? Like, obviously there's not just wrestling is a reason for going to a private school, but I mean, Howard County and Glenelg is one of the top those schools in the state, in the country, and you have people deciding to go to private schools.
Yeah, and that's been happening since I was in high school. My senior year, we had 5 kids in the state finals. We had 4 other kids that were at either McDonough or St. Joe. 3 of those 4 were private school state champs. You got Pagnotta, Bobby Bowman, Nick Shank, and Doug Shank was a national prep All-American. So if you put those 4 on that team, you're looking at potentially, 8 finalists, maybe 9 finalists, and then we had 2 other kids one other kid that placed too. So it's been that way since then. What you try to do, you want to get more involved with the junior league programs so that your face is out there and you build relationships with the kids. Sometimes it's hard. People want to go to private. There's prestige behind that, and they feel that. They like being wanted. So when McDonough calls and says, hey, I want you to come here, that feels good.
Right. You can't. I mean, you could say, hey, I want you to come here, but it's like you're districted there. You know what I mean?
Right.
Not
right.
I mean, it's like there's other schools in the county where they actually have some programs where you can kind of go and they like, oh wait, they do feel special.
Right. And my whole thing is you look at like the Kreiser family. Like if your goal is to go wrestle D1, or even if whatever your goal may be when it comes to wrestling, if that's your goal, you don't need to go to private to attain that. The Kreisers are a perfect example. You look at guys in the past, like a Josh Asper. Like you can get there and you can accomplish all the things you want to by going to a public school, by staying with your friends, by going to school down the street. You can do all those things without having to go to a private school.
I think you could, if we listed it off, I mean, someone's probably done this, but the college Division I All-Americans, like it's pretty split, if not, and now I know there's more public schools, but people talk about the privates, but I mean, you got it, like you said, I mean, Mike Cannon, Brandon Lauer, like, Kreisers, like Asper, like it's all like a lot of, All-Americans are successful in college. And so I think people think, oh, the private is going to put me up and blah, 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 blah. I understand if you're, in a bad school district or whatever. The other thing too, I mean, I know, there's a lot more people who can afford private schools out in the Glenelg area than there necessarily is, on the east side of the county.
No, to add on add on a little bit to what Danny was saying. I mean, it's tough. It's a tough argument with the rules that public schools have in place. I mean, I would love for those to get changed so we could have community-based programs. Like, be awesome to have the kids that can go to Glenelg to stay there. But I mean, I try to reach out when I know. I think I heard Waddy say a long time ago, he said he's never had a problem recruiting against public schools because some public schools don't even reach out to those kids. They just figure, write them off as going to private. I mean, I reached out to Shapiro's, let them know, we'd love to have him. He's going to do well if he comes to Glenelg. We'd really like to work with him. But the ultimate, decision, they decided to go, and that's great. I mean, he's going to do big things. I can't blame him. You're placing at Ironman and Beast as a freshman and winning a state title. And he has, great coaches over there. So I can't really blame him. You just got to tell him that we can do whatever it takes to get you where you need to be. And like Danny said, I mean, you can be a public school kid and achieve the same goals. You got to be dedicated. You're not going to be able to get those matches in season like you probably want, but Super 32 is open to anyone. There's tournaments all, Fargo is open to anyone. You can do all that stuff. But like Danny said, but you can go to a school that's down the street. It's not going to burden your parents having to drive you somewhere, or it's not going to cost a ton of money. You're not going, you're going to be with your friends that you've been growing up with. And then, like I said, I think to try to keep that going, we try to keep our relationship with the Warhawks. I think with Dan over there at the barn, the first few years I was helping out. And when I took over, I don't think he quite knew what our intentions were as far as, our dedication. I mean, Ricker is huge for us. I mean, the Warhawks, and I mean, we're fortunate too, because we get Vipers, we get Mount Airy guys. So it's not just the Warhawks, but I mean, a majority of the kids that come in have wrestled at least a year or two on our mats. They're not necessarily the stud kids. Like, we don't get the blue chippers. I mean, Shapiro would have been one, but we got, Jacob Jones, probably the first kid that came in who was on their A team, who's a stud. Jared Thomas transferred after his freshman year. He was another stud A teamer. Most of the kids were getting like Alsheimer, Hansberger, Saka's, like maybe Ethan Saka. I know he was behind Meyer. I don't know if he bumped up weights during duels to cover those, but those kids are B teamers who come to Glenelg. They have fun, they enjoy it, and they work hard. And that's all stuff that Dan has instilled, just being tough, working hard. I mean, the one other thing too, just with that, building that relationship is, like I said, I mean, I think back when I first started, when parents were asking him, should I go to private? Should I go to Glenelg? I don't think he trusted, just tell those people to come to Glenelg. I think that's improved a lot lately in the last 5 or 6 years. I mean, he's huge. He's a big resource for us. We call him. We had a kid a few years ago who didn't want to come out his junior year. He played football. It was over, and he wasn't showing up to practice. And kids don't tell you they're not going to wrestle. They just don't show up and think you're going to forget about it. Right. So this kid wasn't showing up, and I'm like, I need help. I called Dan, and I was like, man, this kid's not going to wrestle, and he's making a mistake. And Dan showed up at Glenelg right at the end of the school, like sat on the kid's car, like waited there. The kid came down to get in his car to leave, and he's like, what are you doing? You need to go to practice. Like, you're going. And the kid, like, had so much love for Dan and respected him so much, he wasn't going to say no. So he ended up coming to practice, ended up having a great season, and then his senior year, he was a state placer. And, that's the kind of little things that Dan won't brag about, but that's the kind of stuff he does for us. He's always, the barn's always there whenever we need it, if we need it. That's what, he mentioned. We donate from our wrestling budget or the wrestling funds that we fundraise through stuff throughout the year. I always throw him some money from that as a donation for us for everything, man. I want to see that program flourish, and they're doing great. And we want this for that, because that's our foundation. Those junior league programs that are going to come in, they have similar mindsets. We want tough kids. Simple is more. That's our philosophy. And, Dan and those guys, he has a ton of great coaches over there that are helping to do that. And that's just all positives for us. So we really appreciate it.
Do you think there's anything you can do different as a coach that can make Glenelg more appealing or as appealing as a private school? Stepping up the schedule, anything like that? Obviously, you're in a tough situation because of the region that you're in. The ultimate goal, you need to get them to regions to move on to states. But, maybe look outside of the state for tournaments or anything like that?
So what I would say is, because we schedule each year, we go into it and we plan our schedule accordingly, because each group of kids is going to be different. So like 2 years ago when we had 5 studs, we needed to get to tournaments to challenge our studs. We're in a position this past year where all we had was Drew, who was a true stud. The rest of our team, they needed to develop. So it depends on your team. So if we had a team that had studs, we're going to make accommodations to get there. that we used to go to Mount Madness. We changed that. We went to War on the Shore. Damascus is a tough tournament. If we had the group of guys to go to an out-of-state tournament, by all means, like you said, it is tough in the West because you can have a ton of points and not make it if you don't make top 4 in the county. They need to just make it open regions. I don't understand why they don't. Just make the regions open. Everyone qualifies, and we wrestle it out. That's what should happen. But
yeah, I mean, how was that? That was the first year you guys have been 1A, 2A West, and I mean, you talked about Matt about 1A, 2A South back when it was a little bit more competitive when you guys were coming up, and not so much anymore. So I mean, coming from 1A, 2A South to 1A, 2A West, how was that?
I mean, I loved it. I mean, we like Danny. I mean, that was kind of like junior league. I loved the trip. I mean, going to Garrett County to wrestle. I mean, I guess first with the duels, like having a tough. I mean, in 1A, 2A South, when it was like it's the last few years, it's usually like us and Oakland Mills, and then you'll get a team in there. I mean, La Plata shifted in there, but there was times when it was like, teams that had no business being there, and it was basically like you wrestle your semifinal, you win 60 to nothing, and then you wrestle a tough team in the final. Sometimes you don't even get that. I mean, I was excited for the West. I like to push. I mean, I like adversity. I like challenging. I'm a huge proponent for a one combined state tournament. I want to do that. Like, I don't need a kid on my team to get a 6th place ribbon. I understand some people feel that, and some kids would really like that. And I'll explain to those parents that, if you feel that, then I'm sorry. But I like challenging myself. I like going to the West. It was definitely a different animal. I know Casey Camp asked on there what we thought of it before and after.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Yeah. Well, just to kind of hit it, I mean, before everyone sees the West, people post on there this amount of qualifiers placed, this amount of shit happens. And like, to be honest, before I went there, I was like, this is getting annoying. Like, just leave it alone. But when I went there, I was like, yeah, they're right. Like, I kind of sipped the Kool-Aid, and now I'm on there. But I like
part of it now. You're like, yeah, it is the best.
Yeah, 1 year they converted you?
Yeah. No, I mean, it was fun, except for they in the region, and it was the same. We were in 3A, 4A East for 2 years, then we moved back down to 1A, 2A. We were in the South for 2 years, and they need to either come up with an open region or a standardized seating system, because when we used to be in the South, common sense prevailed, and we'd have open discussions about this kid beat this kid. I know he didn't wrestle this kid in between, but that's because that kid wrestled in 3 dual tournaments with teams that had 4 kids on their roster, and we're wrestling here. And in the South, we would make the change because the ultimate goal is to get the best 4 kids out of there. In the West, they don't do that. It's basically like if you're touching, you have to vote on that. In the South, they make rules that it's like if they're touching and they have head-to-head clear, it switches. So the points are basically a qualification, but that's not a seeding credential. And the West does it differently. And I can't complain. That's the way they do it. But I mean, it's tough, and I think seeding those brackets would make it so that you could do that. I mean, obviously,
it is kind of
not involved with that, so I don't know if it would work.
No, there's not consistency across the regions, which is it's interesting that they do that. But I mean, I don't know
what it is.
What I'll say too about the West, it's different than the South because you need to set expectations a little different with how your kids are growing. Like, traditionally, say we're in the South, I'm looking for a kid to qualify. Say he's pretty good as a freshman. Maybe he doesn't qualify for states his freshman year, but out of the South, I expect him to qualify his sophomore year. Maybe not place. Junior year, I want him to place, and then by his senior year, we're competing for a state title. So that's typically the growth. Now when you're in the West, it's like, well, if we make it to states, we should be competing for a state title. Because if you're getting out of the West region, you have a good shot at placing at states.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I mean, and I look at it almost with the auto qualifiers now, right? So, like, if you're not, I mean, especially your guys, if you're not placing top 4 in Howard County, the likelihood that you're going to place top 4 in the West region is slim to none, depending on, the teams in there. So, I don't know. I've seen very few kids that should be at states not make the regions under the current system. But it is, it does suck to look at another region and be like, that kid qualified for states, and like my kid teched that kid and he didn't even make the region.
Yeah, and I mean, just to kind of get, and dual wise, I loved it. Like it was competitive, man. That there was 5 teams vying for those 4 spots. I think Poolsville only had like 1 loss until the last weekend, like Winters Mill. I mean, it was exciting to go to those, have 4 tough teams in there battling for it. I think we had a really good day of wrestling that day. Our guys showed up. We battled. I was really happy. I mean, I think we had a chip on our shoulder because of everyone saying the West is tough. Glenelg is going to have, they're going to have an awakening when they come here and realize the West is tougher than what they've been getting. And for us to go in there and win with the team we had when it was supposed to be kind of a rebuilding year for us was huge. That was a lot of fun that day, just getting it done against a tough middle down team and then beating South Carroll.
Yeah, we looked at it. We had 4 starters from the year before. Is that what it was, Matt?
Yeah, we had 4 out of our 12 or 14 weight classes were starters. The year 10 were new.
That's a pretty respectable rebuilding year.
Yeah, I mean, and we had a bunch of injuries too. Probably, I mean, Massimo Conti was going to be a tough 220. He was a state qualifier, county finalist. He he dislocated his shoulder during football, and then he tore it first week of practice and was done for the year. I mean, he split with Oyster his sophomore year at Damascus. He got pinned by him, then he pinned him. He would have been a tough 220 this year. I mean, Oyster won 220 in the 1A2A. I think Massimo would have done real well. He's only a junior. He's coming back next year as a senior. So you get him back. We graduate 2 seniors in Drew and our 13-pounder David Ridenour. And like I said, it's interesting because we get some kids in. You never know. Some kids flourish in a different environment under different teaching. So we're just able to find the right pieces to put them in there. And, they take their licks. I mean, that's to be expected. This year was a little different just because it was a little bit slower of a start. I mean, we're used to getting the Jared Thomas, Jacob Jones, Alsheimer guys that are ready to go in a week, and they're going to be wrestling at a high level. But, we wrestled Marriott Ridge early and got beat up a little bit by them. And we kind of expected that. And it was just good to see the progress and just a different philosophy. So to see it all come together in the back half at duals, at counties, at regions and states it was an awesome time.
Yeah. I mean, how are you guys structuring that in the beginning of the season? Cause obviously, you get, some Warhawk kids, some kids who are experienced, but you got to fill out the rest of your team with brand new guys or guys that, aren't very good. Are you doing split practices or how do you guys structure like the brand new guys versus the, guys vying for a state title?
Yeah. So we do one big practice. We don't want to change that. We're always going to do one big practice, especially even if we had 45 guys. It makes us do groups of 3. But the attitude is we're going to do groups of 3, but the intensity needs to be higher because you're getting a break. But we're all practicing together. The only time we split them up is some Saturday mornings. We'll separate and keep the newer guys to refine things. But there's no one on our team that can't benefit from going back over all of the basics. Even the guys who are experienced, like when Max Saka came in, we had to teach him how to do a penetration step. And the body positioning aspect, that's more than what our technique is. It's more about body positioning. Our technique, we're very simple. And early on, this is a change we made. First couple of years, we tried to put in a lot throughout the year. And then we're like, what's the point? We only see certain things and we're not peaking at the end like we should be. So we tweaked a few things. So we made everything simple. It's basics, it's baseline. We can problem solve different positions individually. So if you're having an issue here, we'll problem solve it individually. But as far as our technique that we're installing, it's simple. And then we're doing it a lot. But the body positioning and those sorts of things, that's non-negotiable. So if we're beginning of the year, we're going off basic positioning, basic technique, our whole team needs that. And it's something we're going to go back to the whole year because your body positioning, that's bigger than any individual technique. If you stay in good position, I mean, that's something Oakland Mills does a good job of that. They're teaching their new guys basic positioning. And a lot of times it's hard to open those guys up because they're in good positioning. It's something we see a lot, and it can frustrate people.
You're saying they stall over there at Oakland Mills?
I wouldn't call it stalling. I call it tactful coaching.
How did you get that from that? They keep good position, and you're saying he's calling him a staller.
No, he's always trying to get him to open up.
Do you have a grudge with Oakland Mills?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, okay. Danny, I'm sorry that we interrupted. Continue, please.
No, you're fine. You're fine. And it's funny because talking about that sort of position, it brings me back to that South Carroll match a little bit because you had so many people complaining that we were stalling. And what they're referring to is our little guys who are wrestling their state champ kids who didn't give up bonus. Like our 106 pounder wrestled Pizzuto, Kyle Hansberger, and lost 4-0. He gave up a takedown, an escape, and he headbutted the kid. Won't get into that call, but they called him for a headbutt. If you guys seen Kyle Hansberger, he looks like he's like 12. But they called him for a headbutt. But out of their 3 state champs, they got 1 bonus point. Their 120 pounder beat 2-1. 2-1 beat our 120. And then Rodriguez got a major. So people can complain about stalling, but if you're a state champ and you're winning 2-1, 4-0. I think you should be able to manufacture some more offense, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, and that goes to just strategy within, especially a dual meet. You know what I mean? Those are huge. Keeping it close.
Right.
Yeah. How much fun is that going to be the next couple of years with you guys and South Carroll? South Carroll had just that murderer's row of freshmen come in. You guys talk about only graduating 2 people. It was a fun match this year. Conventional wisdom says this is going to be something fun to watch for the next couple of years in a row. I mean, they got some great kids on that team. How do you see those matches go in the next few years?
I mean, it's going to take work. I mean, right now, you would have asked me last year going into it, would we beat them? I would say it's going to take some swing matches, some upsets. We actually lost the toss in that match and didn't get the matchups that we had wanted. So we the strategy worked out, but it wasn't, when you lose the toss and you have a strategy, kind of like we talked about earlier, like you have a game plan to beat a tough team, you don't get the toss. That's huge. I mean, I expect them to be solid. They didn't lose anybody. Who knows who else they're getting from the Maniacs coming in there. I mean, our work's going to be cut out for us, but I like that. I mean, every year we kind of take it as a chip on the shoulder and we're not regarded as, going to be tough. I mean, Billy B does a great job, but I love his team rankings. We're always like others considered or bottom there, and that's fine. Like I don't care about the rankings.
No, I mean, you talked about your 120. I mean, you definitely had some kids where you look at them at the beginning of the year and it's like, who's like, I'd never heard of this kid in the lineup. And, they just, plugging along and, losing close matches and then county tournament, beating kids. And, you guys didn't win the county dual title this past year, but, the tournament was yours.
And I think that's also going back to what Danny was saying. Like we do 1 practice. I mean, we tried split practices. 1 as a coach, it's tough to get. I mean, you get, kind of set what you're going to do, and then to have to refocus and start over with another group. I found that that's difficult. And some of these kids, we don't know what their growth cycle or their improvement cycle is going to be. I mean, some of these kids start off the first week with kids that aren't that good because maybe they're a freshman. We don't know how good they are, but by the end of the year, we're putting them in with, Ethan Saka, Drew Saka, like the kids. And some of those kids benefit tremendously from that, just getting beaten up and even just going out there and competing and hanging, not getting turned in that go versus Drew or, not giving up that takedown or getting in on a leg. Like those are little wins that add progression. And it may not be their freshman year that they're seeing that work come out on the mat, but by the time they're juniors and seniors, like that's when it's progressing. That's like the Max Sakas and the guys like that who, they seem to come out of nowhere. Drew, like, it takes a lot of beatings to get where you are. And I think that's part of the reason we keep 1 practice, even though it's clustered. I mean, we're tight. We do groups of 3, but like Danny said, we force, you're not one guy does it. Next guy kind of walks in, grabs no, it's like you do 2, next guy jump in. And if we're not working hard, then we'll run, we'll do other stuff. Like we condition hard and make those guys make sure they're working hard. And then, like I said, and we compete with live, we switch up the groups. So we try to mix it up and get some new faces in there. And we kind of identify within the first 2 weeks what guys are going to be able to hang and what guys, you can tell who has it, who's not a first-year wrestler and can go up and get beat up a little bit and understand what's going on and still improve from that and learn. So part of that, I think we do a good job of progressing those guys from freshmen, especially if they're not, they haven't wrestled a bunch of junior league matches and had a bunch of experience.
Sure.
And
go ahead. Sorry, bud.
I was just going to say, go back to your South Carroll question real quick. Yeah, we're excited for that. It's going to be a lot of fun. What we tell our guys, and we told them when we moved into the West, was this is why we wrestle. It's to challenge ourselves. It's to do something that's difficult. So like setting up to the West region next year, it's like we wrestle to beat the guys and beat the teams we're not supposed to beat. We want to challenge ourselves. We don't want a cupcake schedule. We don't want to not be challenged. There's no fun in that. That's not why we do this. We wrestle to grow, to get better as wrestlers, as people, as competitors, but it's to beat the guys we're not supposed to beat. So being in the West region, that's what we enjoy about it. We enjoy testing ourselves. It's no fun to wrestle a cake schedule and win a bunch of dual meets and then you don't accomplish your goals. What's the point in that? We have any of our state champions, none of them have ever been undefeated. The 5 that we've had, they've never been undefeated. Drew Saka this year at the Damascus tournament saw the number. It changes, but he was like number 4 in the country and got worked by him twice. And so no matter who we have on our team, we're trying to get them losses throughout the year.
Sure.
Be ready.
Yeah, no, I'm the exact same way. I tell Phil Smith was a high level wrestler for me and Alex DeFore. And I told them it's my goal to get you guys. It's a challenge for me to try to set a schedule where you guys take a loss at some point. And it's not that I want you to lose. It's not like I'm going to be sitting in the corner wanting you guys to lose, but I want you to taste that defeat before the state tournament. Once the state tournament, I don't want you losing anymore. But,
right.
It is almost like a challenge when we're setting these schedules so that you want dogs you don't want show dogs in a dog fight. Do you think that was a difference this year? Because it did seem, and this is not meant as any disrespect, but it seemed like you guys peaked at the right time as opposed to maybe a Marriott's Ridge that beat you guys during the season, but then come the end of the season, obviously they had a couple of wrestlers with great ends to it, but as a whole, kind of fell off a little bit at the end from an outsider's perspective looking at it.
They finished 6th in the county, so I think that's fair to say.
Okay. We'll go with that. Do you think that was a difference with you guys come county tournament time?
I think we've shifted our philosophy as coaches. I mean, after, it was difficult 2 years ago losing to Damascus. I mean, we got to the finals. Like I said, the 2 years prior, we wrestled Damascus state duels. We kind of knew it was the long shot. 2 years ago, I thought we had them. I thought we had the team to beat them. And you got to be ready. I mean, we didn't get it done. It was on us coaches for not getting those guys ready. And you can't just go back in on Monday and be like, all right, guys, we didn't get it done. Like, no, we want to win a county team title. We want to have county champs. We want to have state champs. And I think maybe when I was younger and we weren't getting it done in the duels, I kind of maybe let that emotion reflect more in practice, and maybe that brought some of the guys down. But the bigger goal, I always remember, maybe because we never made duels, tournament time is what you look forward to. I mean, you grind all year to get to those 3 weeks. And as a coach, we're getting to duels, but the kids are getting there for, to be a county champ, to be a region champ, to win a state title. So you got to really make sure we emphasize, we were really proud of the team we had to make the duels, to be honest. Like we knew there could be some chance. We had a tough schedule. We wrestled South River, who was, undefeated until we beat them. We wrestled Seamount and Wright. Like we always schedule some tough out-of-county matches. If we
Man Valley this year or no?
Well, we wrestled Man Valley in a dual tournament at Bowerline.
Okay.
Bowerline duels. But, and then looking at how the teams finished, if we take a loss to South River or, you never know. Oakland Mills match was close. We didn't match up great with them. We won the toss in that one. I think if we lose the toss in that one, we might have lost to them. But just to focus on, the duels, we want to win that. We want to be a state champ. But the goal for you individuals is to keep it going, win a county title. So I think focusing more on that and saying we're still building. There is no peak. We're peaking at the end of the year. Everything we do prior to that, whatever happens in December doesn't matter. Like we want to keep it going and be peaking. We want to be wrestling our best, the first weekend, second weekend of March, whatever it is.
Yeah, the Marriott's Ridge loss in general, that was – our guys hadn't lost a county match. None of those guys on that team had lost a county match. That was their first time. But the discussions and everything after that, it was good. We were able to build from that because we came out that weekend. We lost to Loyola and Man Valley. Man Valley, we got pinned in the last match to lose. Then that Monday, we wrestled Marriott's Ridge. So that weekend into that time. So then it was good. It allowed us as coaches to say, hey, here's where we're at. And this is where we're going to get to. Now let's go to work. And our goals didn't change. That was the conversation at the breakout after we lost was our goals remained the same. There's nothing that we can't still attain because we lost to freaking Marriott's Ridge. You know, the rest of our goals remain in reach. It's just going to take a lot of work. So then it's emphasizing that every day and building on that. And then you have a couple key moments where we're able to build, like the South River match. Our kids came out on fire. And it was a Saturday. It was alumni day. The gym was packed. You use that. And that was 3 weeks later or so, coming off the Damascus tournament where we got crushed. Our kids were defeated. And then 2 weeks later, we're showing up South River, and then we're able to take off from there. And we continue to build. So I think how the schedule played out with our group of guys, we knew our guys this year were going to develop a lot throughout the year. It's different than in years past. Years past, like Matt said, you got guys ready to roll at the jump. This year, we needed to build. So it was different. A different group of guys, different team.
Oh, yeah. Now, would you say that, and just thinking of this, was this one of the more enjoyable years you guys had to coach because you got to see a team overachieve? And it's not a bad thing. You guys have some really studly programs or studly lineups over the years, but it seems like this one in December, you got to be thinking, I don't even know if we're making region duels. And then you guys make the state dual finals, come up a little short, had a real tough matchup in the finals there. But looking back on it now, has this been one of the more enjoyable ones because of the progress that you saw them?
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think, winning, like I said, making regional duels in that tough region was bonus. I mean, we always talk about just making the duels because if you don't make the duels, you have a week off that week and then you go to counties. There's a lot. I mean, we don't want to be just practicing for 2 weeks. We want to be competing. So making the duels was a plus anyways, and to see those kids buckle down and win the tight matches we needed to qualify was huge. Then for them to step up and get it done at, against Middletown and South Carroll, to be able to wrestle on Saturday and go down to North Point, sweet venue to wrestle at and be there with the best other public school teams. And I was tremendously proud of how our guys competed against Decatur. I mean, the score, we talk about it. I mean, our heavyweight was winning. Our heavyweight's a second-year wrestler. He's beating a kid in the third period, tries to do an arm chop, falls over the top and gets pinned. If he just wins the match by decision like he was doing, we lose that duel by 9, which is, Decatur's. Yeah, Decatur's and we had 3 or 4 closer matches that came down to, tight matches. I was very proud of our guys. Definitely. I think this year was the most fulfilling just because we knew we didn't have the guys that were going to carry you. I mean, Jared Thomas is going to flourish in wherever he goes. Jacob Jones is going to be a stud wherever. It's Alsheimer. But, to have kids that you weren't expecting to do it, to show that, you're pushing the right buttons to get them to compete and go out there for 6 minutes. And, I think we do a good job, like I said, attitude and effort. You guys bust your ass and you go out there for 6 minutes and you compete, we're not going to be disappointed when you come off the mat, man. Whatever happens, let it fly, wrestle through mistakes, go 100%. I think Danny has a quote from Colot that says, all technique is good technique if it's 100%. As long as you're going 100% and you're putting it out there, we can't be disappointed. So to see the guys do that and see good things, yeah, I would say this is probably the most proud I've been of a team just from where I thought we would be, where we got to.
Now, what are your goals next year moving forward? Do you return a lot of guys? Do you think you're going to be able to close the gap on a Decatur?
I hope so. We don't know what we got coming in. You hope that these guys keep developing. We don't get too big. Obviously, with this COVID stuff going on, it's difficult because I think a good offseason. I think at the end of the year, especially after last year, you had a lot of progress, a lot of people feeling good about the program. It would have translated into a good offseason. Obviously, the barn's there. I don't know if you guys know, but Lauer was planning on getting Team Penguin rolling again this year, so that would have been another outlet for guys to get mat time, and that's what we need, just getting mat time. So I was really excited. I don't know about anybody that we have coming in that's going to make an immediate impact, but you see how the Saka's improved, so I'm expecting Ethan to use this year as a year to get better and be competing for a state title next year. Like I said, we get Massimo Conti back at a bigger weight. So it'll be interesting. We had 4 JV county champs that wrestled a little bit of time in the varsity lineup. So it's all about jumping levels, how they are going to react to their freshman year and how they're going to build from that now that they know the expectation. Our expectation as coaches and as teams remains the same. We want to be the best team in the county. We want to be a top 1-2 team in the region. We want to be a top team in the state. that's the expectation every year. I mean, our goal is to become a program where we're hanging with St. Joe, McDonough, beating them. Like that's the ultimate goal, not to be the best public schools, to be the best team in Maryland, period. I mean, obviously that's lofty. It's tough. If we get some of those blue chippers to come to Glenelg and keep this relationship with the Warhawks, I think that's definitely in reach. So, I mean, the expectations are always high, but, you know, we adjust and I don't necessarily adjust the expectation. We adjust the way to get to those things. Like Danny said, it's a little bit different planning our schedule. I mean, we got Northern Garrett. We're going to Northern Garrett next year for a duel. I know Casey Camp will wrestle anybody. They like competition. That's going to be an awesome time for our guys to go up there on a Saturday and probably have a packed gym. We're going to push ourselves, and hopefully that leads to good things down the road.
Very nice. No, and so you talk about progressing and improving. You guys are it's kind of weird because you're younger coaches in the grand scheme of things, but very experienced. You guys have been around the block, you know, for a little while now. Do you guys do anything yourselves to improve as coaches? And have you seen yourselves improve, whether it be technically with philosophy or you know, your way of interacting with the kids over the last decade or however long you've been coaching?
Danny, you want to take that, or you want me to?
No, I think you can take it.
No, I mean, I think I love wrestling. We love wrestling. We're a wrestling family. We go to NCAAs a lot of years. We were going to go to the trials this year. So wrestling's always involved. I mean, we watch a lot of YouTube videos. We're constantly sharing techniques and stuff we find on there, watch Flow all the time. I mean, we're immersed in that stuff. I mean, anything I can learn online to pick up something, we're willing to do it. I mean, I always thought that, you know, I think there's a philosophy, like if you admit that you know nothing, then like, I don't know what it is. I'm probably butchering it, but you know, you can never feel satisfied with what you know. You got to keep improving. We try to, every year we pick up something, whether it's from, I mean, we have a good relationship with, like I said, Dan Ricker, with Brandon Lauer, Danny's really good friends with Alex Crom. I mean, any little tip that they can give us that they find success in, we try to implement in our stuff. And then stuff that, I mean, we ask our kids, we go to our kids at the beginning and at the end of the season and say, you know, what did you not like about this year? What stuff we could do better? What stuff would make you better wrestlers? Same, we ask our parents the same thing. I go to my team mom and say, hey, you know, we want to see what makes, you know, a bigger impact on our kids. Like, can you have some suggestions? So being willing to change and not be rigid in your philosophy. I mean, our overall goal, our underlying thing is we want to be in your face, physical, hand fighting. We're not the flashy technique guys. We're simple, which is actually great because it aligns very much with what the Warhawks do. So it's that's one thing that we want to get to is the Warhawks learn. Those kids come in, they know the expectation. That's all of our junior league feeders. We want to have that, but just learning constantly. You can never stop learning. And like I said, we're fortunate. We have our other coaches, Rob is always watching wrestling. He's involved a lot. Dougie is always watching wrestling. He's huge with our big boys, has a lot of different ideas for that.
He mentioned Doug. I do want to give Doug some props because him having a big boy coach is big. I know you guys probably know it with Barbosa because Matt was talking with Toke not too long ago, and I know he feels strongly that the upper weights are underutilized. So having Doug, who knows how to wrestle like a big boy, and he's able to work exclusively with those guys, that's huge. And if you can get competent big guys, that's huge team points. Huge. So, like, for example, Doug Shank took Robbie Baxter a couple years ago, who was 17 and 18 his junior year, and then his senior year, he's in the state finals. So those types of jumps, it's a lot on the kid because they need to be committed and buy in and listen and put in the work. But we have a lot of good support staff that helps that because I tell you right now, I can't wrestle like that the way the big boys do. But Doug is great with it.
Would you say you guys have like a mentor, or both of you guys can answer this separately as well, but is there somebody that you look to or that you go towards that has been a coaching mentor for either of you guys?
I mean, when I first started, I obviously, like, Rob Bowman was big. I mean, because he was my coach. And when I took over as head coach, asking him, like, you know, the ins and outs of that stuff, I think one piece of advice he gave me right away was, you know, he told me I should, you know, set your own schedule. Tell our AD what we're going to wrestle. Don't get in the habit of asking him to set up stuff. I know some schools, like the AD sets up. Like, I set up all my own stuff. I just email Dan, my AD, and say, hey, we set up a duel here. We set up a duel here. I'm doing this. And I mean, I think that's better for him because he has less going on. So that was big, like just getting involved, knowing that I show my AD that I can run stuff and he doesn't need to. It takes a lot of weight off his shoulders. So that's one thing Rob was big in. But no, Brandon Lauer is a huge asset for us. He's big involved in there. He has a lot of philosophies. Super talented as a wrestler and as a coach. So he's a huge resource. We always get Ricker's opinion, and his is always valued about different stuff. And like I said, he's a big resource for us and a mentor for. The kids love him. That's part of the reason we were excited to get JC on staff, because the kids love him too, and he knows a lot of the same stuff that Ricker has taught him through the way. And the way that those guys interact with the kids, it's crazy. Those kids would do anything for him, and that's what we want to keep at Glenelg. We want the kids to go to Warhawks, go to Vipers, go to Mount Airy, and then come to Glenelg and then feed in, and that's how we're gonna keep building this thing into a powerhouse.
Danny, you got anybody that you look up to or that you bounce ideas off of?
Yeah, Lauer's number one. He helps us big time. And between him, as far as technique goes, he's incredible with that. Him and Alex Grom, the two of them, how they break down technique is pretty cool. Pretty cool to watch and be a part of. I think back to when Toke was running Hammond too, and seeing how just the intensity, and a lot of it seemed purposeful, and and how he interacted with his guys. I think back to a time this is all looking at it from the outside, back when I was competing and then shortly after. But you would watch him get into guys' asses, and when he was doing that, why? And it rarely was about technique. It was more about how they were conducting themselves, or certain things that wasn't what he perceived as what Hammond wrestlers do, and how they were representing themselves. So I take a lot of that with how we coach, because it's not about us hitting a bad technique or not winning. But if you're doing that stuff because you're lazy, or you're not putting out the effort to do the right things, that's a problem, and we're going to get in your ass. But if you're going balls to the wall and you do something dumb, okay, well, let's correct it. We'll correct it in the room, and then the next match, do something different. So those are the guys I would say that I look at from afar.
Okay. It's funny you said that, like you kind of have an idea of what it used to be, or I don't know if that's how it still is now. You said, like the Hammond style and stuff like that. What do you want the Glenelg style to be?
We say Iowa style. That's what we want to be. We want to be in your face, beating guys up.
That an Iowa shirt, by the way?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. There we go. Look.
Yeah. No, we everyone in college, they kind of say it's the Iowa style or the Oklahoma State style. Like Oklahoma State's more like stay on the edge, be slicker, be stuff. We don't want to be that. We want to be in your face. We're kind of similar to what Ricker said. We want to be good at what we're good at. We don't care if you know what's coming. We're going to be better than it at you, or better at it than you think, and we're going to take it to you. We're going to be in shape. We want to wrestle hard 6 minutes, and we want to break kids. We have a drill we do in our room called dominance drill, and it's basically like 30 seconds straight. One guy is doing takedowns, and all you're doing is taking the guy down, letting him up, and getting out in front, keeping your hands on him. That was a drill Mike Budak brought in when I was coaching. We loved it. It's just like you can tell when a kid is broken and doesn't want to wrestle, and you got to seize that opportunity to make that kid not want to wrestle. And the philosophy is, we want to break him this match and make him not want to wrestle, but we want to break him when we see him at states. He wants to remember who he wrestled. And that's, he tied it into a story. We talked about Max Saka. His junior year, I think that was probably the year he had a little bit of a surge and kind of caught fire. He wrestled Makosi from Urbana at the Barrowline Duels and got beat up. But he frustrated Makosi because Makosi was trying to pin him, like trying to tech him. I think he ended up only majoring Max by 14. And I think just from Max not quitting, like if you're good, there's a ton of kids who are getting beat up and the match isn't going their way. They're just going to, pout and just lay there. Max would just keep trying. And then he wrestled that kid in the semis of states and beats him. Beats the kid 4-3 at semis to make states. Had to wrestle Aaron Brooks. So obviously that didn't go too well in the finals. But I think just that mentality is something that, I don't necessarily say it was just from practice, but, or not just from us, but from this, Mike Budak, guys like that, the Warhawks, his family, like just that never say die mentality. I know Danny can attest to the same kind of philosophy, Sam Alsheimer had. He went through a lot. He broke his leg in football his junior year, almost had to have his leg cut off because he had compartment syndrome. It they drained. He was out until mid-January his junior year, came back, wrestled like 10 matches.
Could hardly walk. He couldn't run. He could hardly walk.
Yeah, made the state finals, lost in double overtime on a controversial takedown. A lot of kids that would have broken. Then last year or 2 years ago, he gets in the state finals, gets taken down to his back in the first like 10 seconds. And instead of panicking, we talk about scoring the next point. Don't get in your own head. It's not, oh, I gave up 4. I need to get 4 to match. It's no, get an escape, get a takedown, keep grinding, trust in your technique, trust in yourself, mental toughness. And, he was able to I think he got like a stall point. He got an escape. He ended up catching the kid and pinning him. But we really emphasize the mental toughness of this sport a lot. We talk about it. We talk about our guys. We use a lot of our examples, which I think is a good thing we have, is just from doing it and wrestling in the same, we're wrestling in the same gym as these kids. And when we were coming up, we can relate to them. And we tell them, like, you got to be mentally tough. You got to just shut the outside noise out. Even if your parents think you're not doing something that they want you to do, or, the fans say this needs to happen, just trust that it's going to get there. Just work hard and compete. And by the end.
And it's funny too, because Matt mentioned the mental side of it, and it was something that you guys mentioned, I think, on the Ricker interview about Bill Smith, was that the amount of emphasis that goes into the mental side of it. And when you're an athlete and you're doing it, you don't really recognize it. It's something me and Matt didn't really recognize until you get older and you're looking back on it. And I had this conversation with Jared Thomas like 6 months ago. We were talking about it because he's out now and he's doing great. But he's starting to think about things in a different way. And you want that to click a little bit earlier, because then it makes all the difference, right? So the mental side of it and that component, it's massive. You get more accomplished by changing the way you're thinking, changing the way you think about practice, right? You can't be like, embrace the grind of practice. It's like, well, let's get better today. Like, is it going to be difficult? Yeah, but you can either look at it as an opportunity to get better and to better yourself, or you can look at it like, motherfucker, I got a 2-hour practice that I'm going to be drained from. Well, yeah, but what's that accomplishment? We're getting better, man. You're bettering yourself. You're bettering yourself as a wrestler. A lot of people can't do the things you're doing. So embrace it. Have fun with it. So that's a big part of it. And with us, it's like we're going to bust our ass for when we're in the room, and then it's light. It's light outside of that. We'll have fun. I think that makes a difference too.
Talk to me about Jared Thomas a little bit. Like that's because obviously extremely talented. But seeing his growth as just a person, as a man, that's got to be pretty fulfilling as well. Maybe even more fulfilling than seeing his progress on the mat. Yeah, for sure. And so with Jared, we heard things before he got to Glenelg, obviously. Some people were like, oh, he's a bad kid, blah, blah. I mean, I love Jared. Like, even when he first got there, he was always respectful. He did what we asked. Now, with Jared specifically, it took time. You had to build the trust and build the respect. He's the type of kid where if he trusts you and respects you, and this goes for a lot of kids, if they respect you as a person, they know that you have their best interest at heart. You're not here just to try to get them to win matches and make you look good. When you care about the person, it makes all the difference. So then he's able to act more free, and it's not like, I don't know the right words to say it, but watching his maturity. I mean, if you remember, we had a conversation after his junior year because he was talking about graduating early, going straight into the military. Right. And you were like, what the heck are you doing, man? Like, you got to know you're high school. Enjoy it. Like, you don't need to do this now. So, and then he came around and he said his senior year was the most fun he's ever had wrestling. And that dude, along with Sam Alsheimer, they're two of the biggest competitors I've watched. And I love both those guys. They were awesome as competitors and wrestlers. Jared Thomas won 130 matches in 3 years at Glenelg. Wow. That's 130 wins. So on his career, I don't know how many he had at good counts his freshman year, but he probably has close to like 180 wins, if I had to guess. But his talent he's probably the most talented kid I've seen come through Glenelg. But he took on more of a leadership role towards his later years. Before he was there, he was a part of the team. But his end of his junior year and then his whole senior year, he was basically like a fifth coach for us. That dude's going to become he's going to become a great coach when he decides to do it.
And I think that comes, and that might be part of the reason why we're okay at coaching too, is because you look back at your past history and where you fell short, and you're like, man, what could have been. And so then you make changes and you talk to your guys and you try to make an impact on them. But Jared's going to be a great coach. And like you said, what he's doing now, I mean, he's in the Army. He's deployed right now, but he's killing it. He's doing great. But it was awesome to watch. Still is awesome.
Sweet. Well, we won't. We could spend all day talking here. I do want to before we wrap up or anything. We'll give you the floor also for anything else that you want to talk about. I do want to get into the write-in questions. There's only a couple of them this week. Something I'm going to try to do every episode is actually read directly from Facebook, word for word, to the best of my ability. Just questions coming off it. Just see what your guys' input are. So we're going to come at rapid fire. Danny, I'm going to go to you the first one because, Matt, you touched on it a little bit. Casey Camp wrote in, what were your thoughts on the 1A, 2A West before coming into the region, and what are your thoughts now after wrestling in it?
Yeah, so and this repeat a little bit, but we knew it was going to be tough. You do get tired of hearing people talk about it because it's like, man, what are you going to do about it? You know, like you can talk about how it's great, and it's like, yeah, it is. Okay, now let's go wrestle. So, but it was good. It would have been fun to go to that tournament a year earlier when we had some more hammers, because it weeds out the guys who aren't at that level, which is good because it's going to prep you for the state tournament. I was happy with how our guys competed there. The one thing I'll say is it opens your eyes to how some of those Western Maryland guys are ranked. And how these dudes go under the radar like crazy. Like those Garrett County schools, they'll have dudes popping upsets the whole tournament.
Absolutely. Yep.
It's crazy. And I wasn't ready for it. I knew the Garrett Counties are always good. I mean, when I was in high school, we wrestled them in state duels. We know Carr, he coaches over at Howard. So you know how good they are, but you go the whole season, you hardly hear anything. You know that they're kicking ass in 1A, Southern Garrett is. But you don't really think about it, and then you're in a big tournament, and they're popping upsets left and right. And like we had Ethan Saka hit a kid in I think it was the quarters, semis, and I was like, where the hell did this kid come from? Kid was tough as hell. So that was eye opening. And like I said, changing your expectations for your guys and how you navigate. But it was good. It was fun to travel out to Garrett County. The duels were awesome. I think the duels got us ready for state duels. Like I think we competed great against Decatur because of that preparation. And we want the challenge. We enjoy that. So it was all good stuff. It does make you discouraged. I don't know if that's the right word, but you see the other regions where people are qualifying or the weight classes with people losing records and you're like, what the hell is going on? Why do we have this? So that makes you question it. But outside of that, it was good. If there was still scoring at the state tournament, I think I would be a little bit more upset because I would want more qualifiers for states. That really would hamstring you. I don't think I've ever realized that before. But you look at it and you're like, if I was in the South this year, we probably would have qualified X. But out of the West, we're qualifying like 4. So trying to win a tournament title, it makes it difficult.
Sure, but I mean, when they were keeping score, the last several years, the tournament champions were coming out of the West. Still, even with that, imagine if they were coming and they could qualify.
Even more
guys. Right.
Yeah. Right.
It's. I do have one more question here. Rob Kalishman wrote it in. I'm gonna mix it up a little bit. He wanted me to ask about a wrestler that you guys developed that you're most proud of that was not a Warhawk. I'm going to change that to – well, you can touch on that one. I don't know about specifically Warhawk, but do you have a favorite wrestler that you developed from scratch that didn't have junior league experience coming in?
I'll start because I know Danny will have an answer too. I mean, to be honest, we get a lot of kids that have junior league experience. That's the one thing. I think that's the thing you want. I mean, you want guys that have junior league. So thinking of guys that came through, I mean, David Ridenour was a county champ this year, state qualifier, had a really good road to being a state placer. Had a tough first match that I thought he might be able to get, and that would have set him in a good route. He started wrestling as a sophomore. JV kid, I think he wrestled in the varsity county tournament as a sophomore because a kid got hurt that was our starter. had a good junior year, made the county finals, was a state qualifier this year, won counties. Just one of those kids that fell in love with it late and did a lot of extra, not necessarily go to practice, but he was watching flow. He'd come into practice, hit stuff in practice that we were like, how do you know that? And he'd be like, oh, I saw, Jason Nolf hit this in this video. And they're like, okay, well, that's cool. Like, he's a guy I think of. Another guy. I mean, I really take pride in the JV kids we get. We get a lot of the first year kids that come out that never have wrestled before. And I think it's cool to see them. Like, we had 2 kids do that a couple years ago, kind of we called Red. Michael Thogerson, he came in, wasn't sure how he would take to the sport, and he was just one of those kids that really fell in love with it. And I think it just kind of set his life in motion a little bit. He kind of seemed like when he came in, he didn't know what direction to go. Now he's in the Marines. He hits us up with he texts us like, how'd you guys do tonight after matches? Like, he's very involved, and it's just great to see someone have, find that sport and have an outlet to have some fun and do that. And it's great. I mean, another kid, we posted on our Facebook page, we had a heavyweight this year, first year ever wrestling, came out as a sophomore, 330 pounds, couldn't make the weight, his dissension plan wouldn't allow him to wrestle until JV counties. He ended up losing all the weight and getting down to 284, won the county JV tournament as a first year wrestler. And those are the kind of stories that I like. When I hear parents email me after the season and they're like, I didn't think so-and-so was going to make it, and now he's just can't stop talking about it, and he's really, I have kids right now who are saying, like, so-and-so's running, conditioning, getting ready for the season, like, when can we have practices? And I'm like, I'm hoping this gets lifted soon and we can start getting back out there. But those are the kind of kids that I love to see develop. Because I ramble, but, probably if you had to say a kid that had junior league experience that came in that I was really proud of, Max Stock is easy. I really like Kevin Hansberger. That kid wasn't a stud Warhawk, didn't have a ton of experience. He got beat up, but like Danny said, I love that kid. That kid would never quit, went after it, ended up being a 2-time state placer, 2-time county champ. That kid is going to be a very successful person down the road with just his work ethic. And I think that's what I like to see kids realizing through wrestling, their work ethic, working hard can get you good places and take you far. So that's me. I'm sure Danny has some other people maybe in mind.
You captured most of them. But yeah, that question, I didn't really get it, because it shouldn't matter if they're Warhawk or not. In a perfect world, I want 14 Warhawks or wherever they come from. So I didn't get why that mattered. But you look at some of the Warhawks who did develop, like I think Nick Kingsbury, who won a county title this year. He was 15-26 his junior year, and then this year he was 35.
Sophomore year.
Oh, sophomore year. And then his junior year was 35-11. So like that's the stuff that we look at, and it's like, man, you made a huge jump, and it's like that's what we want to see. That's how you get guys who start on JV and then their junior, senior year, they're contributors to the program. And we tell our guys, like, hey, if you're on JV, you're not like it's not like varsity and JV. We're one team. When this varsity guy goes down, he's hurt, he's sick, you're in the lineup. So you need to get ready. And so it's not, we tell especially our young guys, it's not bad to be on JV. You're getting ready to fill his shoes, so you need to get ready. And so it takes time, and you build that. But those guys that Matt mentioned, those are the top. Another kid, like Matt was talking about, Jake Arnone went from like 8-14 his sophomore year, and then he was 35-9 his senior year. So we get kids that'll pop like that, and that's what we enjoy seeing. And that's how you keep a successful dual team. You get those guys who it doesn't click early on, but then they keep progressing, getting better, and having a growth mindset. And then by their senior year, they're competitive, and that's what we're looking for.
Gotcha. Can't argue with that. Now, is there anything else that you guys want to touch base on? I always tend to drag these things out, a couple hours when we try to make a goal to keep them about an hour. But it's wrestling fans talking wrestling, so it's all good. Is there anything else going on with you guys?
Not really. Like I said, it's unfortunate all this stuff's going on with COVID. I was excited to build off of what we had going from the end of last year. Hopefully, we can get back there soon. hopefully there's no repercussions for the season coming up, because that would be a shame. But no, I'm excited. I really enjoy these podcast things. It's great to get different people's perspective. I love hearing from different people to see, like I said, I'm trying to learn, hear what successful people do. I mean, we're trying to compete and win a state title. We're trying to beat Decatur, next year and win a state title. And then, I mean, my personal goal is to get reclassified up against Damascus and end their state title streak. Like, I want to be the team to end it. I mean, I was disappointed we didn't. I hope they win it again next year. So then, like I said, maybe we get bumped up to 3A, or maybe they get moved down and we can have the opportunity to try to beat them for a state title. But, that's my goal. But it all comes down to just pushing yourself, learning. I mean, it's all about building better humans, better, men and women for the future. That's why wrestling's so great, learning the values that you're going to need down the road. And that's what I like. When I see, you talked about Jared's development from, being a great wrestler, but becoming a great, leader and person. And that's going to translate. There's tons of examples like that, not just on our team, but everywhere. And that's what I'm excited for. So I'm hoping we can keep doing that this year and just keep it rolling.
Yeah, and to add on to that, the other part is just you want these kids to face adversity, and that's what wrestling provides, so that they can deal with adversity and respond. I mean, that's one of the big things with the sport of wrestling. You need to know how to deal with adversity, and it's not, hey, something gets hard, like I'm going to give up, I'm going to stop. It's no, something gets hard, you figure out a way to go about it, a way to overcome it. And when you get examples of that, that's the biggest reward. Like Matt mentioned, Sam Alsheimer, when he won his state title, me and Matt went crazy. It was like the most emotion I think I've ever shown in my life. And just, it was because of all the adversity that he had to overcome to get there. Those are the things that we enjoy about coaching. That's what makes it fun. But yeah, we don't plan on stopping anytime soon. I mean, we're having a lot of fun doing it. The other coaches we have, they're great. It's going to be exciting when we get to add a couple new ones. But yeah, we're looking forward to it.
Great. Awesome. Jason, what else we got going on, man?
Nah, thanks for coming on, guys. I mean, I talked to you guys this year, and I think, you guys are doing everything the right way. And it's, as a Hammond, former Hammering guy, it's, it's tough. I'm rooting for Howard County, you know what I mean? And you guys are, I got no bad things to say about what you guys are doing. And I hope, like I said, I hope we can keep some of these private school kids home and beat up on Damascus or whoever we need to do and get Howard County another state title.
Definitely.
Cool. No, it's great to have you guys on. Both state champions, now back coaching where they graduated. Just like your wrestling careers, it felt like you were always in the mix for a state championship every year. Eventually, that senior year for both of you, it came. I think it's going to be the same thing with that state dual title. It's just going to be a matter of time, and that thing's going to be, belong to Glenelg here soon enough. Just be patient, keep doing what you're doing. Really appreciate you guys coming on today.
Thanks, guys. That was awesome.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Sweet. Well, thank everybody for tuning in today. It's another episode of the CTW podcast. Thank you for supporting Champions that Wrestle, and we'll see you next time.
See you guys.